Welcome to another episode of the Sarazanmai cast, the weekly, live reaction / review show where we look at Sarazanmai, the Kunihiko Ikahara show, which makes somehow more and more sense and less sense every week. We're on episode 7 this week. Last week was the first time we saw a deviation from the formula, or week 5 that was. We saw the first deviation from the formula, and last week we saw the payoff from that with the lucky item being repeated for the first time, and we saw a lot of resolution to things that we didn't think we would see. We saw that Haruka had met with Kazuki's birth mother, and just all kinds of crazy wild stuff that we hadn't really expected to see. I'm interested to see what will happen next. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, already I'm stopping just for a quick acknowledgement. Kawa Uso means otter in Japanese, and someone pointed out in last week's episode that Kawa Uso, they could be using it as a pun in English as well, which means otter or utter lies, right? Which kind of gives the show's opinion about what they think the policeman's agenda is. Just wanted to mention that because the first pun in this episode, the first line in this episode was otter lies, pun on utter lies, so I thought that was fun. Okay, so remember last week we talked about binaries and deconstructing binaries and how desire and love is set up by a false binary by the police people. We kind of see the reverse of that happen this episode. So we're still deconstructing the binary, but where before the policemen were trying to get rid of desire and just separate it from love and show that desire and love are not the same thing, here we see that in everything there's some of what the other part of the binary is supposed to be. So the policemen who are supposed to be acting to get rid of desire, we see the kinds of unwarranted or the kind of desires that they wouldn't like to see in society, they're acting out themselves, because this policeman is having a homoerotic scene with a otter in a kitchen, and it's hot, and I don't just mean the stove, right? So it's good to see that the show is taking its deconstruction very seriously. Someone did speculate that this policeman likes the other policeman in a romantic fashion, and we might see that explored more in this episode, because we kind of saw a hint of that in the post-credit scene of last episode, where they showed the Otter Kingdom blowing up the Kappa Kingdom. I'm curious to see how they'll expand on that, because by acknowledging that this kind of desire exists on their side of the coin, they're basically admitting that what they've set up, the binary that they've set up, isn't really the case. So I'd be curious to see how they deal with that. I think that's going to be the gist of this episode, is that how they deal with the relationship between the two policemen and the relationship between the otters and the Kappas themselves. So all in all, very interesting stuff. Wait, is he a robot? Okay, so this actually kind of makes sense. You're probably smarter than me, so you've already probably guessed that he is a robot in the first place. This kind of makes sense because whenever they see him extracting his heart, it's always a clockwork heart, like there's some machinery involved in it. So it makes sense that he would be a robot. I think they're trying to draw a distinction between duty and self. Like, you are not just your duty. You're not just a cog in the machine acting out what your role is supposed to be. You do have a personality. You do have a say in the matter, right? And this would be maybe the most distant thing from this show, but I can't help but draw this connection. If you've ever heard of the banality of evil, right? There was this reporter who was watching a Nazi commander be put on trial after World War II for war crimes, and his excuse for his behavior was that he was just following orders. And she remarked that the people who just follow orders can also be evil. Like, evil doesn't require a malicious intent. It just requires for good people to do nothing, I think is the saying as it goes. So this guy is criminalizing desire and killing the people who are diagnosed with these desires that don't fit into their worldview, the otter worldview, because it seems like only Prince Kappa exists in this world. The rest of society is ruled by the otters. They seem to have a controlling stake in things. So when he finds these desires that don't fit into society, he criminalizes them and removes them. But it shows that because he's a machine, he's doing this just out of a sense of duty. But I think by showing that he has feelings for this other policeman, they're trying to distinguish between doing your duty and being a person. They are two different things, and you don't have to do one or the other. You can do both.
この手が届く人たちとちゃんとつながりたいって思うから。
Dang. Okay, so I basically said the same thing last episode, is that he thinks the connections that he doesn't have are the realest ones, whereas he doesn't see the connections that are right in front of him. And of course, that was a theme that they laid out for us to see. And now he says, I want to build real connections with the people that are within my reach, because yeah, that was supposed to be the realization of last episode. So we're like 6 episodes in, we're halfway through the show, and already there's significant character development going on. And now since after last episode, we've kind of established like the first character arc of all the characters that we know. Kazuki, Kuji, Enta, Haruka, all their character arcs have all made a tiny progress already. And now we're getting more info about the world at large, right? So this theme should tie in with what we're going to learn about the policemen as well, because I feel like this is the same thing that they're also trying to do, but they're kind of held back by where they started as other policemen who have other duties to perform. Oh, damn. They're doing a full start from the beginning on us. Okay. So this is effectively episode 1 of arc 2. Then that's what that means. We're going to start a whole new arc with a whole new premise, a whole new formula probably. Okay. That's very interesting. If that is the case, which we don't know is the case, this is a very early call to make on this. That would mean the first 6 episodes of the show one side of the binary that they've been showing us, and the next 6 episodes are going to show us the next 6. Is it a coincidence that all the weirdness is happening in episode 7, aka episode 1, if you're looking at it as 2 sets of 6 episodes? I don't think so. This is the very first shot of the very first episode, starts exactly like this, with Azuma-Sara saying good morning in the background, and Kazuki going, oh, I have 3 rules in my life. Only difference is he's carrying around a ball instead of a box. Coincidence? I think not. The pun for the episode seems to be based on Tama, so hit me with those Tama puns in the comments, because I know they're coming. Let's see what happens up with Toi Kuji. His brother just called him, and like all of a sudden he just says, I can't play soccer with you guys anymore. I'm assuming that means he has to go meet him, or he's leaving, or something to that degree. So let's see. They changed the song! Oh, this is more, I'm just putting this onto the pile of, this is arc 2 of the second. This is the first episode of the second 6 episode arc. We see the police song, that's still the same, but there's no, courtroom scene where they're talking about somebody that's been killed. The song is different. Let's pay attention to the lyrics. Interestingly, the 2 refrains, mainly don't let go of your desires and ring out the desire or whatever, both of those are still the same, but the other lyrics have all changed. Like, we know what the true nature of the Otter Kingdom is now, so they're kind of more open with what they actually want, which is an endless night. Kind of confused as to, and they said their encounter will only happen in the morning that never comes. I guess that's them acknowledging that in the system that they're going to set up, the endless night so far, for them, there's never going to be a morning where they can like be with each other like they want to be. Interesting. They're clearly shaking up the formula. We'll see if it's a new formula altogether or just a remix of the old one. Either way, I think it's still significant. Let's see. The ball is wearing a ball gag. Let me repeat. The ball Kappa zombie is wearing a ball gag. This show. Okay, continuing. I knew that was gonna show up when they started getting kicked by high heels when they were doing the whole spinny frisbee thing. This dude just wants to get kicked. Okay, continuing. Oh my god. Okay, that's the first secret that Enta has ever had, really. Oh, the first one was pretty good too, but this is real nice. This is a juicy next level secret right here. Okay. So the first arc was all about positive feelings, or things that could be resolved positively. These are about like negative feelings. It's interesting. it's not like the first arc showed everybody in a positive light necessarily, because Kuji's secret was that he killed somebody, and he was cross-dressing as an idol. They're not necessarily, but this seems like pure jealousy to me. It's interesting. I mean, they showed it in a comedic way, but this is pretty bad. If you're a friend that did this and you found out about it, you would probably not be friends anymore, or you have a long conversation about, can you chill, bro? Like, what's going on with you? We need to talk. Okay, he's clearly very jealous. He's had Kazuki all this time just to himself, and he doesn't really want to share, I guess. I'm pretty sure you could resolve this, but this, coupled with Kuji having to leave soon, I don't think ends well. That's the end of the episode. What a cliffhanger to end on. I'm going to talk more about it, but let's first see the post-credit scene. Also, the episode title is I Want to Connect, but I Want to Betray. Very interesting, because the police officer, clearly, when he had to save his partner after they got injured at the destruction of the Kappa Kingdom, he said, I'll do anything to save you. And we weren't really told what he did to bring his partner back to life, but clearly he betrayed something that they both held dear, and that's why they both can't be together now. Interesting to see that that's the case. And then the second example of the same thing in this episode was Enta wants to connect with both of them, or so he says, but he betrays that trust by messing up the place where they play soccer because he just wants Kazuki to himself. And in a way, it kind of worked because Kuji's now leaving. I don't think he intended for that to be the case. I think he just wanted them not to play soccer with the three of them. I think he wanted it to be just the two of them because remember, Enta has the hugest crush in the world on Kazuki. Okay, that being said, on to the post-credits. Very, very strange. Interesting, but very strange. Okay, so they have this other thing sealed in a jar, which they call hope, and the hope thing just said darkness. Is this like some kind of dark Kappa Prince? Like the opposite of the Kappa Prince that we've seen thus far? So many questions. Police officers, they clearly were in love before the Kappa Kingdom broke. They brought him back to life, just kind of as a like automaton who just has no feelings, it seems like, but we kind of saw that he did have feelings at the end of last episode, at the beginning of this episode. What does that mean? What is it trying to say about people who are automatons or just cogs in the system? Does that mean that they also have feelings, also have personage, are worthy of being considered more than just cogs in the system? I think so, but this guy can't fully, reconcile the fact that he lost his partner and the new thing that they say is his partner is not his partner that he was used to. Then there's this hope thing. Why is the hope in a jar? Is that like Pandora's box? The last thing that came out was hope, and that made it all better. And in this case, hope was never let out, so there's only darkness. That's a bit of a stretch, that last one. This clearly we were going in one world line. We've like branched off into a completely separate one at this point. I don't really know what to say. It's just the only thing I can do is just ask so many questions because we're completely in the dark on this. Like, we've been watching this show for 6 or 7 episodes now, and we've been just looking at one thing, which is they're trying to fix the problem of desire being treated as a disease, as a monster that has to be destroyed. They kind of incorporate the desire into their worldview. That's how the Kappas get their nutrition. And they get these dishes of hope. And at the center of it is like this interpersonal, like, I won't say struggle, but it's basically an interpersonal drama with Kuji and Enta and Kazuki all dealing with their own problems. Kazuki is the protagonist, so most of the problems that we've dealt with has been his so far. And he's made significant progress as a character. Like Enta said at the beginning of this episode, he's kind of become the Kazuki that he was before Haruka's accident happened. And the way he said that, it made me think that Haruka's accident happened relatively recently, which would explain a lot. Like, if your sibling had an almost life-ending accident and you felt you were responsible, think of all the stuff that you would do to try to compensate for that. He couldn't even face him directly. He was so just like traumatized by that incident, and he had to try to communicate with him indirectly through sending him pictures of himself dressed up as an idol, something that he did not even want to do. There's that whole side of things. And then there's this whole other side, like functioning at a different level entirely, which we saw a glimpse of in last week's episode, where Haruka got dropped into the shredder because they didn't want love to be part of, or they didn't have any use for love. They were just trying to get desire out of it. I don't understand any of that part right now. I feel like we haven't been given enough information to say anything meaningful about that part, because really we're taking a hard left turn on this episode. This and the last episode and the one before that kind of set these last two up. We're taking a hard left turn on what we've been shown thus far, and that just makes it all the more interesting. Just all kinds of questions, just questions upon questions that I have. I hope will be answered next episode. I'm glad to see the policemen are making more of an entrance, like they're playing more of a part in this. We don't really know what their relationship will end up being. We kind of know what their relationship used to be, but we don't really know what it's going to be in the future, going forward. Very interested to see where the show goes from here. As we see with most shows, when we hit the midway point is usually when it starts dragging, because it doesn't know what to do with the rest of its runtime. If the first couple of episodes have been especially strong, that usually means that the next couple of episodes are going to be pretty weak, because either they run out of ideas or the pacing tends to slow down so they can stretch out the last bit of plot for the end. Not with this show. We're accelerating at this point. So the first 5 episodes I thought were already going pretty fast. There's a twist at the end of every episode that sets up the next episode. And these twists aren't just out of nowhere. They're set up by previous events that happen all the way at the beginning. Like I said last week, a lot of the stuff that we saw happen over the first 5 to 6 episodes were already set up at the very first minute of the show. But with additional context, we were able to decipher what the show was trying to tell us. And that's like Babe Ruth calling a shot and just hitting it out of the park on the next ball, right? I just found that extremely just impressive, to say the least. This show seems to be like taking just giant leaps. Every second seems to be a giant leap. Every episode we're moving faster than the previous episode. So I don't really know where we're gonna go from here, but I'm 100% guaranteeing that it's gonna be worth the ride. The show has like style, substance, everything. There's nothing that it doesn't have. There were a couple of shots in here I wanted to just pause and just look at the artwork. There was one particular with a seagull, with the depth of field effect and just like gorgeous character animation and like this shimmering lights in the background. They've really taken it to the next level with the show. I was surprised to see that for a lot of the people who made Spring 2019 anime season videos summarizing their thoughts about a lot of the videos that came out this season, that Sarazanmai was usually B tier or lower for most of them. They don't really think much of the show, and I wonder if that's because they either didn't watch it. Like when you watch this show just casually, I feel like you would miss a lot of the stuff that really makes it special. And to really get more of the stuff, you need to watch it with an analytical eye from the minute go. And I'm not saying that those people don't do that. I'm just saying that when you're doing a live review like this, I like watch every frame looking for stuff all the time. And I think that makes it a lot easier to appreciate a show like this that's so dense and so packed with different stuff. In between, Kazuki was wearing a shirt that said frog on it, and I wanted to comment on that, but I just let it go because I think it's more important to focus on the stuff that's happening at a macro level at this point, because we were working at the micro level before. We were working at the level of the interpersonal drama now, or before, and now we've progressed on to the much broader macroscopic context of the struggle that these boys are engaged in, and how when they defeat these Kappa zombies, it does have repercussions. Like the police said in this episode, there are things happening in the bigger world. Like the Kappa zombies are down to 39% strength or whatever, and they skipped a couple scenes with the police. I'm guessing that means they're losing strength, and that's the reason they're doing that. There's also nobody that they killed today. Usually they interrogate somebody, extract their desire, and they end up dead. That didn't happen this week. I'm curious to see what ends up happening with that. That particular part of the formula I feel is gone. But we did get still the two best parts, the two best sequences of each episode, which are the policeman dance song and the boys doing their frog dance song. This show is worth watching for that alone. Episode 8 coming out next week. I don't even know where we're going to go from here. Just things are left turn, left turn, left turn. We're going in like 100 different directions at once at 7,000 miles an hour at this point. My brain is just racing with all the questions that I want to ask, but hopefully next week we get more answers. So that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next episode.